Thanks for joining us, and today we're going to talk about Kriya Yoga and ultimate liberation. So in yoga and Kriya Yoga, there's an idea about sort of the final goal of the yogic process. And this is talked about as liberation, and in particular, ultimate liberation. And the term for this in Kriya Yoga and other yogic paths is Kaivalya, which means ultimate liberation. It actually means separateness. And the separateness refers to a separation between consciousness and matter, so between Purusha and Prakriti. And so the idea is that through a yogic process, one realizes that one is the pure consciousness, and matter is just a reflection of spirit, right? So the idea with this is that you want to separate yourself or your consciousness from the things in which the consciousness inhabits. And then to return to spirit as a form of ultimate liberation, being free from the fetters of Prakriti, of matter. And I have a different perspective from this about trying to separate these things out. The perspective that I have is that we require integration. And integration is a process where we're able to deal with disparate parts of ourselves, integrate them and harmonize them and transform them. We want integration at all levels, at the level of the body, at the level of the emotions, at the level of the mind, at the level of the awareness, of the deeper spiritual realizations or perceptions. We want an integration through all of those levels, and we want to have an integration in the world around us, right? So it is about having internal transformation, about making change now. And with a lot of spiritual paths, they don't really have a methodology for dealing with the here and now. A lot of times they're using yogic process or yogic techniques as a means of trying to escape, if you will, trying to go beyond the sensations, beyond the emotions, beyond the mind, etc., 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 with the idea that you get into this ultimate state where you are free from matter, right? And as if that will be liberation for you. But from my perspective, that's not really what happens. We are in a universe that is in flux, that is in change. Everything is changing, right? So one can either accept that life is continuous change, or one can try and escape that change, right? I'm not one for trying to escape that. Now, some people may say, hey, well, you teach Kriya Yoga, and if you don't believe in ultimate liberation, why are you teaching it? Well, the reason I teach Kriya Yoga is because it has a very effective method for getting inside. And when you get inside an internal process, which we call pratyahara in yoga, when you get internalized, you start to perceive things inside, right? And it's not all puppy dogs and fairy tales necessarily inside. We would expect that it's going to be, oh my God, it's unending joy and love, and it's going to be a great party and this kind of thing. In actual fact, you may have some experiences like that in meditation, and those are wonderful. However, you will also run into other things inside, which are unresolved patterns, right? And many spiritual paths don't really have a methodology for processing those. They want to say, whoa, that's negative karma. Only the guru can remove that, right? Things of that nature. They say, oh, you know, you're holding on to something from the past and you need to let it go so that you can move from the past to the future of, into spirit, that you can leave matter behind. All of these things are delusion. They're not the real you. The real you is this pure, unfettered consciousness. And I don't have evidence for that. My experience of internal process is, yes, there might be some expansion and peace and beautiful experiences and a realization of the connectedness of life. But that doesn't mean that there aren't things out there that are in states where they're unresolved patterns, where there's challenges. We know that there are challenges throughout life. I have challenges in my life. You have challenges in your life. I don't know anyone who doesn't, right? But if you try to avoid those challenges, if you don't develop the skills to deal with them, if you don't process them, refine them, and transform them into something that is useful for yourself and others, then you're not doing the spiritual work. You're avoiding your spiritual responsibility. So really, the spiritual path is about discovering inside what is there, right? And you're like, whoa, I've got all this stuff. It's some personal stuff. It has some stuff that has to do with my family. It has to do with my ancestry. It has to do with my community. All of these things are in an unrefined, unresolved state. The spiritual process is one where you get the opportunity to resolve that stuff, right? The spiritual process is one where you're creating an inner space where you become aware of things more than just your body, right? Your emotions and mind. You become aware of all these things inside, and you start to find ways to work through them, right? And by resolving those patterns within, they start to manifest the resolution, and the harmony starts to manifest without, right? Which directly impacts your community, your world around you, right? The people around you. And so that is really what the spiritual process is about. It is not trying to escape to final liberation, because, I think it was maybe the Buddha that said, I will come back, when he was talking about reincarnation, and said, are you just going to leave, Buddha, and you're never going to return? He's like, I'm going to return until every single brother, sister, blah, 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 is, realized enlightenment kind of thing, right? So recognizing, with his perspective, that everybody, is part of this whole transformation, right? This universe needs to go through that. So the primary spiritual responsibility is with ourselves, with our own internal stuff. And as we start to work that out and do internal transformation, then it affects things around us, right? That is what living the spiritual life is about. It isn't about saying, okay, I need to cut, the chains of karma and all this stuff, and then get to ultimate realization, realizing that I'm not, anything to do with matter or the material world or any manifold existence, right? That I'm beyond that, and I'm pure spirit, and I'm just gonna go. That's like shirking your responsibility spiritually. You need to do the work, right? So get down to it and do the work. And in Kriya Yoga, that means starting to do the practices and become aware of what is there, and you start to work through that, right? By doing your practice, you can get into very high states of meditation, but you're not doing it to escape and go away. You're doing it to get into those patterns, to really understand them, to resolve them, right? To resolve them for yourselves and for people around you, because they have an impact on everyone. We inherit all this stuff. Some of it is ours, and some of it is just from the collective, right? So we need a means of working through it. And so really the spiritual process is not about separation, as in the idea of Kaivalya, separate of Prakriti and Purusha, right? Separation of consciousness and matter. It is really about the integration and transformation of spirit and matter. And so when we understand that, we can then become open internally to what our experience is. Things are going to, come to us in meditation, right? Often people say to me, like, they might they're doing Kriya Yoga or whatever, and they get internalized and so on, and then they're like, oh, I'm not having any spiritual experiences. Well, part of the reason for this usually is that people are not opening themselves up, because there are so many things that they don't want to deal with, right? That are basically like in the basement of the consciousness, if you will. So many unconscious patterns that are sitting there that they don't want to deal with, and they may not necessarily have the skills to deal with it. And they're like, I want to just have a peaceful, blissful meditation. I just want to experience, samadhi. I want to experience bliss, right? Well, those are good, right? And that can come from energy moving through your system and so on. But really, it's about understanding, getting into the actual spiritual work itself, facilitating the transformation, opening yourself up and discovering what is there, right? So that process is an integration process, right? It is so vitally important. That's what the spiritual process is about. And quite frankly, that is what evolution in the universe is about integration, new growth coming from old things, right? Old things get broken down, it gets transformed into new forms, right? And out of that, new life comes in an exploration in the universe. That is what is happening. So it's a natural process within, as within, so without, right? So when you work internally, then you have an effect externally. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.